Welcome to the Vandy Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Lee. Our guest today, Seabass of WNWS in Jackson, Tennessee. Our sponsor of this show is Wellspire, Nashville's Learning and Development Center. Wellspire offers personal and professional development opportunities in a beautiful facility in the Gulch neighborhood. Stop by for an event with world-renowned speakers or host an off-site event that will wow your team or your clients. We thank our co-sponsor, the Well Coffee House, which turns coffee into water and has a mission to bring clean water to the world. Our news today brought to you by Sutherland & Belk, a Nashville-based injury law firm. Sutherland & Belk is committed to fighting for those who've been injured in car, motorcycle, and truck accidents. Check them out at sbinjurylaw.com. Well, Vanderbilt starts the SEC tournament in a double elimination phase. It plays Auburn on Wednesday afternoon at 4:30. You will probably be hearing this after first pitch is thrown, but the Commodores were the SEC regular season champions and will now try to add an SEC tournament crown to that before heading to NCAA play next week. Our guest line today, brought to you by Boll & Branch, which was started by Vanderbilt graduates Scott and Missy Tannen. I'm a Boll & Branch customer. I've slept on their sheets for years. They are wonderful. They are fair trade certified, which means they're made under safe conditions by men and women who are treated fairly and paid fairly. Try them for a month. You can return them for free, but as a guy who's used them for years, you will not want to. They will be the best sheets you've ever slept on, and if you have those, try the mattress. That was voted best mattress of 2018. Go to bollandbranch.com. That's spelled B-O-L-L and branch.com. Enter the promo code VANDY. Get $50 off your first set. Support our sponsors and the people who help this show. Seabass joins us from WNWS on a Wednesday afternoon. As I am doing this, I'm watching Ole Miss and Arkansas on TV. Vanderbilt will start not long after the conclusion of this one. In fact, maybe about the time I'm uploading this podcast. So that's our time frame for what we were talking about. My friend, thank you for joining us today. Hope you're doing well.
I am doing very well. I'm watching baseball myself right now, but a game that's much more important than that one. The D-backs and the daddies, buddy. Here we go.
I'm going to see the Diamondbacks next week, I think. I'll be out in Colorado. This is my niece is graduating from high school, so we're going out there, which is why I'm not in Hoover. And this is a cool story. It's the younger sister of my nephew who walked on at Wyoming and got the football scholarship, and now was their number one receiver in the spring, by the way. But he's got a younger sister, and they're both kind of cut from the same cloth. They were both class presidents, that type. And she is a really good high school basketball player. She was about to take a Division II scholarship offer and got an invited walk-on spot at Colorado State, the only one that they gave out this year, with some, not promises, but some talk of getting a full ride later. So we're going out to see her graduate. Very proud of her, and I'll probably be following Colorado State women's basketball now.
Sweet. Can I go?
Sure. Come along.
Sure. Come on.
But I think we're going to catch the D-backs. We usually see the Rockies play while we're out there. My in-laws are partial season ticket holders, so I think we're going to see a little Diamondbacks, Rockies, which will be my first major league game live this year, which I'm looking forward to that. So.
Well, you know, a young man that I called a bunch of his high school games was hoping he'd find his way to Nashville, but Ryan Rollison is actually in the Rockies organization. I believe he's in the top 5 or 6 prospects and doing well. Young man out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, first-round draft pick this time last year.
Yeah, boy, of the Rockies. All right, you ready to get into it, homie?
Let's roll. I know you want to talk hoops today. I guess the first thing, and we had a question about it in the mailbag, but I guess I'll go ahead and ask it here. It's from Mr. Vandy. He wants to know what you think about the assistant hire of the men's basketball program, the latest one. Vanderbilt now has a third assistant, so let's start with that.
We'll go ahead and give you the pronunciation. It's Faragi Phillips, who was the former head coach at Whitehaven. Of course, as you know, they got Matthew Morrell, and then the young man, the big center, 7'3", made it all the way. I think what was it, Chris? The state semifinals before getting put out by, I believe it was Bearden that put him out and ended up winning the state. If you remember, before that, he was actually at Mitchell and won a state title or two. I've heard a few interviews from Coach Phillips. He seems to be a no-nonsense cat. A younger guy, but no-nonsense cat. I believe, I think I had this right. I want to say he played basketball at Tulane. I think it was, if I remember correctly. But I'll have to double back on that one. But I know he's well respected and connected. I know he was part of, I think, what Penny's AAU staff, I think it was maybe. It is always great to get connections and inroads to Memphis players. Now, I mean, is that going to lead to the Wiseman type players? Not as long as Penny Hardaway's there. Probably not. But, if we can get into Whitehaven schools like that, I think that's fantastic. Good AAU connections. And I think he kind of goes along the lines of Coach Stackhouse, because Coach Stack, as you know, from all the accounts that we've had before the hire was made official, he's a no nonsense type of coach too. He's going to let you know where you stand with him, and he's going to get after you if you're not doing right. Coach Phillips is the same way with Whitehaven. And, I saw somebody point this out the other day on the board, and I thought that was right, that Coach Stackhouse has pretty much filled out his staff kind of the way that he said he was going to, blueprint-wise. I think he's done just that.
I heard Gary Parrish talking the other day. This has an indirect tie into Vanderbilt, or maybe a direct tie-in now. And Penny Hardaway, obviously, is going to – he and his network of people, I think, will get who they want out of Memphis for the most part. But they have made it sounds like a conscious decision not to just make the whole roster Memphis people, which I think you could do that and field a great team. But I think everybody thinks they're the man. They start in high school. They all think they're going to the NBA on and on. I think his theory is that if you have too many Memphis guys on the team, you have a lot of people hanging around that are complaining about playing time, those type of things. So I think they're going after the cream of the crop, which means there's going to be some leftovers. Now, the question is, can Vanderbilt go head-to-head with them on any of those kids? I don't know. But even if not, there's going to be some kids out of Memphis for the taking. I saw Whitehaven play last year at the CPA tournament. Of course, I went to see Kessler play, and I ended up seeing Whitehaven before that. The 7'2" kid they've got, whose name escapes me at the moment, looks like he's a 10-year NBA vet. I mean, he's enormous. Looks like he's been in the weight room and everything. Now, I don't know how good a player. He's not a bad player, but he wasn't a dominant player either when I saw bits and pieces of him. The Morrell kid I really liked. He's not as highly rated. I think he's maybe a top 120 type guy. And I guess he's a undersized small forward, maybe a 6'3", 6'4" kid. But that cat is really athletic and can get off the floor. I think he's going to be a good player for somebody. I will wait and see how big a player Vanderbilt is for him, but that's one to watch.
I mean, I can't imagine that they wouldn't be a player for him. You never know. I get cautious with the big men, and their size and all this other stuff and the physical stature. Because, I mean, if you remember, with all the love in the world, Jerry looked like dead-gum Dwight Howard.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes those big guys that pass the look test. Who was the guy at Kentucky? This has been about 12, 13 years ago. They had a big man from New Jersey that was a 5-star and was just okay there. But you looked at him and he got off the bus and walked to the gym, and you're like, this kid looks like he's a number 1 draft pick, and it just never followed suit despite how physically impressive he is. If you said the name, I would know it, but this was one of the Tubby Smith kids, and I'm drawing a blank.
Yeah, I'm not sure who you're talking about. But, look, you're either 7'2" or you're not, and it gives you a chance, gives you an opportunity to do some things, to grow into, and a lot of times those cats are so awkward, but I don't know. I've only seen a little bit of him, but I think Matthew Morrell's a heck of a player. I think he's 6'2", 6'3". went back and watched some footage of the Bartlett game with Whitehaven. He's a heck of a player. There's no question about that. Look, because you're right, Chris. Look, Memphis kids, I mean, I'm from Memphis. I'm from a product of the Memphis City school system. I know what it is. Memphis kids want to play in Memphis. A lot of times you see this thing when kids want to go home, go away from college. You know what I mean? That's not the case in Memphis. They want to play for the Tigers. But it's kind of like you mentioned. First of all, yes, you could field a very good basketball team, but I don't think you beat the Dukes and Kentuckys of the world with Memphis City school players. You don't. You're just not going to. But there's plenty of talent there in Memphis. And I'm thinking about the guys like, I'll get his name wrong, but you remember the cat from TCU a couple of years ago, from Bolton. I think it was Fisher, might have been his name.
I can't think of it either. Yeah.
But you know what I'm talking about. Played for TCU. I want to say his name was Fisher. Played at Bolton. Guys like that that'll come in and get you 15, 16 points a game, who may not be James Wiseman type of players, but that doesn't mean that they're not legitimate big-time basketball players. That'd be fine with me. That is okay with me. And I think that Penny recognizes, look, if I want to win, look, I know I can I got the 901 lockdown. But if I want to take that other level, you take it to that other level. I get the Boogie Ellises of the world, the Quinones of the world. Players like, got to go get Precious, players like that from outside of the 901. And that was the question that I had about him, was can they go out and get out of the Shelby County city limits? I know everybody knows the name Penny Hardaway, but, can you bring those guys in? And so far, it looks like the answer is a resounding yes.
It's interesting the way the basketball world has gone. You saw Michigan hire Juwan Howard after not getting rid of John Beilein. John Beilein went to the NBA. John Beilein, I think, was one of the top 5 coaches in college, and I think he's going to be missed up there. But it's really interesting to see Michigan do that. You're seeing more and more of these programs, right or wrong, take this sort of angle in hiring a new coach.
Yeah, and these guys, and you're talking about some guys that are just on the cusp of being names to kids now. Now, in the case of like a Juwan Howard, I wonder how many 17 and 18-year-olds know who Juwan Howard is. Stack just got through with basketball, and Anthony Hardaway, it's Anthony Hardaway. You're going to know those names. But, it does seem to be the trend a little bit more. Juwan Howard's got, he's got quite a bit of assistant coach experience, right? He's not just kind of new to the game, right?
He's coached in the NBA. I'm not sure how long.
Yeah, I know he's been on the bench for a little bit, man. And I knew that they were certainly taking a look at him, but it seems like that's kind of the trend now. We've got Penny, we've got Stack, we've got Juwan Howard. And of course, some of these other guys who've already taken jobs in the NBA and become head coaches. And of course, let's not forget about Avery Johnson and the job he did out in Alabama. The guys that we grew up watching are now the head coaches in these leagues.
Bryce Drew took a lot of criticism for the inexperience on the staff. And, of course, what Bryce did is he hired people he was comfortable with, which is the same thing that Jerry Stackhouse does. And I'm not going to generally fault coaches for doing that. I've been in positions before I did this where I hired people, and you want people that you're comfortable with. So I always understand that. But I wrote that piece in January that got a lot of attention, and it looked at experience in coaching staffs. And that staff was 14th in the league in terms of pro and college coaching experience, and it had less than half the experience of the number 13 staff. Well, this staff has about half the experience that the Vanderbilt staff last had. Does that concern you?
If I say no, what are we even bothering then? Experience does matter to a certain extent. There's no question about it. However, there's always the chance. First of all, I don't care if David Grace even steps on the floor, on game day. I don't care if he's on the bench at all from a coaching standpoint. The value that he has from a recruiting standpoint trumps anything else. I mean, is David Grace on there because he's got a great basketball mind? I don't know that. What I do know is that he is a super valued recruiter. That right there alone puts him on my staff. With Coach Phillips, these days, Chris, now I don't know how much it's worth because I'm not there, but relatability for these young cats. Today's players are just different. They are just different. And, he's a young enough guy. I mean, he's known in the 901 and other parts there. He's got a lot of experience dealing with these cats on their level. I mean, what's that worth? How much is that worth? And then in your other assistants, one who's known to be a very, very good at player development on the NBA level. No, it's true that we don't have that experience that we're looking for on the college level, but that doesn't mean this can't be successful. Everybody's got to start somewhere.
Well, you're right. He did what he said he was going to do when hiring a grassroots guy. And I've heard good things about Faragi Phillips, by the way, from a source that knows him. Although he was surprised they made that hire. And I was too. I just thought that, okay, Grace is an ace recruiter. Grace is a guy I've said on the show before that a lot of times you're going to hold practice and he's not going to be there for several days at a time. That's not a knock on him. It's just what he's going to be doing is bringing in talent. I thought that they would get a more traditional established bench coach, but he went right back to what he said he was going to do 2 months ago, and he did it.
Well, and let me tell you something. Now, you don't have to be completely 100% transparent, but I'm going to switch sports for you for just a second. And on the pro level, as you know, I'm a big Colts fan, right, Chris?
Correct.
I wouldn't trade general managers for any GM in the league. I think Chris Ballard is the number one best GM in football. And one thing about him is he's quite transparent. What he tells you he's going to do, it's not a smoke screen, not a sideshow. He tells you what he's going to do, and then he goes out and does it. Now we haven't seen Jerry Stackhouse coach the first game, but so far, the things that he's talking about, what he wants to do, the way he wants to build this, what his vision of this program should be, and is going to be under his direction, he seems to be doing that. Well, now, does that translate to wins? I don't know, but he seems to be pretty transparent so far.
Let me throw this out there, too. The coaching world is changing, and it's not just basketball, but it's baseball with the use of analytics, and you've seen this staff be filled out in other ways with other support people who are not their three assistant coaches. And I think that the staff will be very analytically driven, which, by the way, I think the last staff was to a degree as well, if not a large degree. But I guess what I'm getting at is this. Coaching is changing. I don't know what the answer to is, but maybe you do not need the traditional bench coach the way that we grew up seeing them and experienced assistants and stuff. Maybe the new technology and data and stuff like that, and maybe Stackhouse is at the forefront of that. I would imagine that he is. He's a younger generation of coach. Maybe that sort of erases some of the deficiencies that we look at them in terms of comparing the staff to other staffs around the league in terms of experience. I don't know what the answer to that question is, but I'm just going to throw that out there.
Yeah, I think that's legit. And, it's interesting. The game of basketball is changing so much. One thing that I appreciate about of course, it's really weird because the interesting thing is, look, the NBA product is hard for me to watch right now. It is. Just from the abandonment of defense and just from the style standpoint. It doesn't seem to me like, and I could be wrong about this, Chris, maybe you have a different opinion on it. I feel like and I thought it would, and maybe it will eventually, but it hasn't seemed to have the effect on the college game nearly as much as it has in the NBA, where they just abandoned one half of the game. Think about it like this, Chris. Three of the teams that made the NBA, the Final Four last year were Texas Tech, Michigan State, and Virginia, three of the best defensive teams in the country.
Yeah.
And so it's amazing to me because as you see these players trying to transition to the next level, and hey, you can say, well, yeah, but that's only certain players. Well, yeah, but you've got Texas Tech and Virginia, and I know both of those teams have players that are going to go in the lottery. Gonzaga was the Haramu. I can't think of his last name. You know what I'm talking about. He's going to go in the Hachimura. That's right. Is going to go in the first round. It's I don't think that type of basketball has infiltrated college basketball quite yet to this point, and I expect it to happen sometime, but it hasn't to this point. But one thing that has is analytics. I mean, I think analytics is, because you mentioned it, has found its way into almost all sports. Once you get to college and the professional level, analytics is such a huge part of it. And it sounds like, by the hires and, basically almost positions that we're not used to having, that Coach Stackhouse plans on implementing that in our program. But I would say this to you: at the end of the day, in a conference like we're in right now, with the coaches that he's going to have to go in 2-3 times a week, up against some of the best coaches in the country, and just the sheer talent that's in this conference. We can talk about analytics and the people he's hired and the experience and this and that and lack of it. In my mind, this is going to come down to personnel. I mean, and right now we don't have it. And I look, I don't even know what my expectations are for 2019/20. I don't even know where to begin when it comes for that. The only thing that I know is that from a personnel standpoint, which is the utmost important thing, more so than coaching anything else, you have to have the material. We don't have it yet. So I'm going to sit back and wait and just see how much David Grace and his ability to recruit, and Coach Stackhouse and his ability to relate to these players, and him having that name and being able to carry that, plus the AAU connections there. I can't truly judge till we are able to get a little bit more talent out there, and to get the personnel, because without it, all this other stuff is fine and good, but I think that we're going to be playing from behind for a while.
Hey, first pitch of baseball for Vanderbilt Auburn is a few minutes away, and I need to get ready for that in a minute. But any baseball thoughts before we end the podcast in a moment?
Just that I was having a conversation with a buddy of mine at work today at the station, and he's a big fan of the Wildcats. And what I told him was, and I think J.J. Blade said something to the fact that basically they're there to win the tournament, which is fine, which is cool, and it wouldn't hurt my feelings one bit. And I'm certainly pulling for them to do so. But I can't. There's just that part of me that, we've already won the regular season outright, and I would just want these arms to be as fresh as they possibly can be. Do I want to beat Auburn tonight? Sure. But at the same time, I am also quite okay with an early exit from Hoover.
Yeah, I think that sums up the way most people feel. Hey, I've got one quick question from the mailbag. This is a good one. Today's mailbag is sponsored by Vanderbilt fan and independent insurance agent Josh Minton of Brentwood. Are you in the market for auto, motorcycle, home, renters, or landlord insurance, life or commercial insurance? Call Josh at 615-933-1979. Email him at josh@hqinsurance.com. Follow him on Facebook at facebook.com/JD Minton HQ. He's my insurance agent. Hope you'll make him yours as well. Crime Door says, how did Seabass become a fan of Vanderbilt sports, the Memphis Grizzlies, the Indianapolis Colts, and the San Diego Padres? And I think I might add the Philadelphia Flyers, too. He didn't ask that, but I think that's your hockey team. He says that's an interesting collection of teams.
That is, because I don't believe geography should have a dadgum thing to do with who you pull for outside of high. Man, I picked those teams when I was 5 years old, except for the Memphis Grizzlies. It's the only sport in which I've ever had a change. I grew up as a boy as a Utah Jazz fan, and I made the switch when a young man from Merritt Island, Florida, was drafted by the Chicago Bulls. I think you know who I mean. When Will Perdue got drafted, I became a Bulls fan, and when he left the league, it was about the same time the Grizz were coming to Memphis, and there was really no other Vanderbilt players in the league. So I really had no team to latch back onto. So Memphis got that team, and I went with them, and I've stayed with them ever since.
The Colts and the Padres, how did that happen?
I don't know, man. I couldn't tell you. I was 5. I picked all my teams. I was a Vanderbilt fan, and I didn't know where it was.
That's the most bizarre thing ever. I don't know how you would have even heard of Vanderbilt at 5 years old. That's back before they were on TV. It's crazy.
Chris, let me tell you something. I would get the Houston Chronicle every Saturday morning. There would be hundreds and hundreds of high school football scores. Man, I knew all of them, man. It's what I love to do, man. That's what I've always loved. And so, I don't know how it all got started or why. I mean, for all I know, I like the pretty blue horseshoe on the helmet, for all I know. I could not tell you that, but all I know is I've loved those teams and I'm all about fidelity and I've stuck with them.
When I was a kid, I used to get up. This went back to even elementary school. I would get up in the morning and go get the paper out of the driveway from my parents, and I would have the sports section devoured before breakfast.
Exactly. Exactly. That was Saturday morning. Don't get me wrong. I used to watch some cartoons here and there. But all the other kids are doing that Saturday morning, I've got the sports section of the Houston Chronicle out with a big bowl of Fruity Pebbles doing my thing. I've read about every game that was played the night before.
Saturday morning, April through, at least August before college football started, that was This Week in Baseball. That was my thing.
Oh, dude, let me tell you something. I had it all. You remember the little baseball digest that looked like a TV guide?
Yeah, I had some of those.
Man, I'd read them cover to cover. I'm telling you, man, just ate it up. Chris, I was born to be in this field, man. I think that's what I've always loved, And some people say, how do you remember all this stuff? Well, how does a lawyer know all about the laws? Because what they love is what they're passionate about.
Hey, be good, my friend. I'm going to let you go so we can both watch some SEC tournament.
Keep it real, homie.
All right, he's Seabass. And tell people where they can follow you on Twitter, where they can find your show online.
Yeah, thank you, brother. You can follow me on Twitter at CheapSeatsBass. You can follow the show online at WNWS.com. And if the good Lord blesses you to be in Jackson, Tennessee anytime, Monday through Friday, 6 to 8 p.m., you can find me at 101.5.
I'm Chris Lee, the host of the Vandy Sports Podcast. Thanks for listening. Got a tricky week with travel, but we'll try to come back with one, maybe two more of these later in the week. Thank you for listening. We will see you again very soon.